All right. So, inshallah, we'll start with our lesson today. So, the lesson is one of the most seminal moments in Islamic history, and that's basically Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam establishing the Medina state, or the state of Medina, or the first Islamic state. Yeah, and this is a very important time during the history of the Seerah. So let me just go into the slide mode. Okay, you guys can see the full screen, right? Yes? No? Maybe? Can somebody let me know if you can see the full screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, sir,
Okay,
we
good.
can.
All right. So there were 4 projects that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam set up in Medina. Okay. Can anybody tell me what those 4 projects could be? Any guesses? Any thoughts? What those 4 steps could be? 4 projects could be. So you've entered a new city. You are its leader. What are the 4 things that you think he would be doing? Any hands? No hands. Any guesses?
Oh, I think I know one.
Go ahead, Hania.
So he set up like the brotherhood system between the Muhajireens and the Ansars, and then he set up like the Azhan, and then he set up like building the first mosque as well, and then I don't know the last one.
Very good. So setting up the brotherhood, that's one of the 4. Setting up the mosque, that's one of the 4. So you got 2 out of the 4. And Azan was part of the setting up of the masjid. Okay. Anybody else? Musa, go ahead.
So I think from the images you showed us at the first screen, my theory is that he might have probably given them education or set up education services for the Ansars so that they can learn more about Islam.
Okay. Thanks, Musa. Okay. Mariam, did you want to say something? I think I heard something from their side.
Yeah, I was gonna say that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam made the first masjid there as the project. One of the projects.
Okay. Brilliant. But what are the other 2 projects that he set up? So Brotherhood ek ho gaya, Masjid was another one. What are the other 2? Any guesses? Okay, so let's explore. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was establishing the first Islamic state, right? And the first Islamic state is built on 4 very distinct pillars. Okay. So the first pillar is establishing the masjid. That's the first thing that he did. Okay. The second thing that he did was, like Hania said, was establishing the Islamic Brotherhood, and this was between the Muhajirin and the Ansar, the people who had immigrated and the people who were the helpers. Okay. And the third thing was he set up something called the Covenant of Governance. Covenant ka kya matlab hota hai? Contract, agreement. Okay, so jisko Urdu mein hum kehte hain Misaq Medina. So this was the Covenant of Governance, which is going to so it was basically a document or an agreement which bound everybody together in how they live in a harmonious way in Al-Madinah. Okay. And the 4th element that he set up was establishing the Islamic army. Okay. So in any state, it's very critical that, the masjid is set up. And then, like Musa said, the masjid was not just the masjid, it was a place to learn. It was a place for welfare, and we'll understand all of this later. And then establishing the Islamic Brotherhood between the Ansar and the Muhajirin, and the Covenant. So these were the four pillars of the state of Medina that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam set up. Okay. And we're going to now unpack each of them, and we're going to go into a lot of detail, inshallah. So just bear with me, right? Because we should all remember that a lot of the depth of the Seerah is in the Medina period. Okay, so Masjid banane mein kya hikmat thi, kya cheezen thi, and what do we do? And this is where we take life lessons from as well. Yeah. So how does the masjid sort of help us in today's day and age as well? Okay, so establishing the masjid. So the masjid was the first thing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam worked on when he arrived in Medina. Okay, it is to be noticed that the first thing that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did in Quba was also to do what? It was to establish the masjid, and that was the first masjid in and around Medina, even before Masjid al-Nabawi. So the reason why it's important is because the masjid is acting, like Musa said, also the center of learning. Yeah, so that's where people will come and learn. और आजकल तो हमारा especially पाकिस्तान के culture में ऐसा होता है कि you go to the masjid and people just go and pray and come back, right? But in the olden times, the masjid was not just the masjid. The masjid was the center of learning. There used to be a madrasa there. There used to be, religious studies there also. And then there used to be secular studies as well. So the religious scholars were such good mathematicians. Unko ek English ka word hota hai polymath. Polymath is when you know quite a few sciences, right? So Ibn Rushd, Ibn Sina, all of these people were like, religiously eminent scholars, but they knew sciences as well. So Islam was the seat of learning. And basically, even if you go into the history of the University of Cambridge, the University of Oxford, the blueprint of these universities started from what used to happen in Muslim Spain. So the first universities were being set up by Muslims. And then the Europeans learned from it. And that's when they set up the Oxfords and the Cambridges. So the Muslim universities predated that. Musliman ki jo universities thi, usse bhi pehle ki thi. Theek ho gaya? So Rasulullah in Makkah had Darul Arqam, and then he was going to build a masjid which would expand the function of Darul Arqam. Now, agar aapko yaad hoga, in Makkah, it was a secret dawa. Okay, they could not do it in an open space. Okay, so there was a Sahabi Al Arqam Razila Ta'ala Anhu, unke ghar ko ek tarah se markaz bana liya unhone. Udhar hi wo aate the, they used to study there, they used to pray there, it used to be like a center. And now in Medina, they can practice their religion in a much more open manner. All right. ठीक हो गया. So let's keep moving. So Darul Arqam was a secret location where the Muslims would meet to pray. Now Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam does not need to have this in secrecy anymore, right? So he can now have this in open, and that's when he built the masjid, which was now known as the Masjid al-Nabawi, the masjid of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, any questions? Keep moving now. Okay. So how did they choose the location of the masjid? Does anybody know? I need to see hands. So how did they choose the location of the masjid? Okay, I see Shayan's hand first. Shayan, go ahead.
Sir, after होने वाले इंसिडेंट के जो कैमल था जो हाँ
You're close.
जाकर वो बैठा था
Okay.
वहाँ पर मस्जिद नबी
Okay, Shayan is saying that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam ka jo camel tha, wherever it went, that's where they built the masjid. Hafsa, go ahead.
I think I saw didn't Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he told the camel, he said the camel would choose the spot for the masjid. So
Very
the camel
good.
went and fetched.
Very good. Okay, now let's see what happens. So you're all right. Yeah. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was riding his camel, and people were pulling it towards the left, people were pulling it towards the right. And basically Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, leave the camel because it is being commanded by Allah. Okay, so usko chhod do. So मतलब कुछ अपनी तरफ खींच रहा है, excuse me, कोई left side पे खींच रहा है, कोई right side पे खींच रहा है. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, leave it. Don't direct this way or that way. Let it go wherever it's going, because who is guiding it? Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is guiding it, right? So then what happened? So the camel, while going through the streets of Medina, stopped at a particular location, which was a field for drying dates. So khula मैदान था जहाँ मस्जिद नबी बनी हुई ना, वहाँ actually it was a place, it's a flat area. If you've been there, it's a flat area. उसके पास कोई, there's no mountains, there's nothing, it's not up and down. It's a flat place. So in those days, what used to happen was they used to dry dates there. उधर खजूरों को dry करते थे, because खजूर, when you take them off the tree, they're a bit soggy sometimes, they're a bit fresh that way, and if you want to store them for a long time, you have to dry them. ठीक हो गया? This field belonged to two orphans from Medina. ठीक है? After the camel chose this location, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, this is our place, this would be the location of the masjid and the Prophet's living quarters. So udhar hi aapne masjid banane ki shuru ki thi. Muhammad, you've been to the Medina Museum, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And in the Medina Museum, they have a model of the original shape of the Masjid Nabi. It sort of looks like this. तो ये शुरू की जो मस्जिद नबवी बनी थी, it was sort of like this. It's not like how you see it, broad towers or wo. And then these houses that you see were basically the houses that Rasulullah and the Sahaba used to live with. Yeah. So that's how it is. And remember at the start, where was the Qibla? Which way was the Qibla pointing? Was it pointing to the north or to the south? Okay, iPhone 15, which I think is Abdullah. Go ahead.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम.
Walaikum
I
salam.
think it was Jerusalem या if I'm not wrong ये वाली कोई जगह
Very
थी.
good. Excellent. iPhone 15. So it was pointing towards the north, which was Jerusalem. And Makkah was where? To the south. So interestingly, आपको ये नजर आ रहा होगा कि इधर जो है shade बना हुआ है, that's where the masjid is. And this is where the house is. But then later on, the Qibla changed. So this became the shaded area. And now if you go to the Masjid Nabwi, you would see कि Qibla के साथ ही आप सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के घर है. Right? So earlier on it was like this, but now it's like this. Okay? All right. Any questions from anyone?
Not a question.
All right. Okay, hold on. Let's move on, okay? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wanted to buy the area, but the orphans refused to sell it. They said, we will give the land to you by, without any cost. But Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, if you go back, if you remember, he would always be financially independent. He said, no, I will still pay for this. Okay. So then what happened? So the building of Masjid Nabi began. They built it from mud bricks and the roof was palm leaves. Okay. So it was very simple structure, mud bricks thing, koi cement nahi tha, there was no mortar, there were no blocks like this. It was basically, aaj bhi agar if you go to the rural areas, gaon mein chale jao, a lot of the structures in Pakistani villages are also made out of mud bricks. And the roof was made out of something called, which was palm trees, right? So when it would rain, the drops would fall right on top of their heads. The floor was just sand. So there was no pakka floor. Okay, so simple masjid, sand on the floor, bricks made out of mud, and chat made out of palm tree leaves. That's it. Okay, very simple structures. So even though it was very simple, it was the most blessed masjid. This was where the first generation of the Sahaba graduated from, the best of the best, the most elite of the Sahaba, the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are all the people who graduated from where? Masjid al-Nabawi. Okay. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also took part along with the Sahaba in the building of the masjid, right? So he was not just sitting there and giving instructions. He was part and parcel of it, right? So he was leading from the front. So the poet amongst them said, if we sit down while the messenger of Allah is working, that is a misguided act on our behalf. So agar Rasulullah काम कर रहे हैं और बैठ के हम तमाशा देख रहे हैं, तो ये एक अच्छी बात नहीं है. We have Mama around 4 boys. 4 boys here in person. Acha. So that's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was carrying the bricks. He was moving around and he was not just sitting there, right? So now establishing the masjid, there are a few lessons that I want to go through. कि मस्जिद बनाने के क्या lessons थे, ठीक है, क्या हिकमत थी. So what does the establishment of a masjid means? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, and they are those, if we give them authority in the land, establish prayers. So Allah का हुक्म है, Allah identify करते हैं कि जब मैं किसी को authority देता हूँ, power देता हूँ, तो सबसे पहले वो क्या करते हैं? वो नमाज सेटअप करते हैं. They set up a masjid, वजू की जगह, ताकि सबसे पहले अल्लाह ने आपको हुकूमत दी इसलिए ताकि आप अल्लाह की तरफ लोगों को इबादत की तरफ लेकर जाएं. अब अल्लाह ने आपको हुकूमत दी, आपने मस्जिद छोड़ दी, आपने उधर जाकर कुछ और बनाना शुरू कर दिया, तो अल्लाह की रहमत, मदद एंड हेल्प नहीं आएगी उस तरह. ठीक है. So by establishing a masjid, they are establishing the center of Allah. ठीक है, center of Salah. Now the other thing is leading by example. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught the Sahaba through practice, right? He said he would work side by side with them. He did not give orders from a high place. This explains the role of leaders in Islam. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam की बहुत जबरदस्त attribute ये होता था कि he would never ask his Sahaba to do anything that he did not do himself. Okay, so in the battle of Khandaq, everybody is digging the trench. He's also digging the trench. They are extremely hungry. पेट उनके हल्के हुए में. They're tying stones on their tummies. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is also doing it. It's not like a Sahaba are working and then he's sitting in the corner and having nice meals. No, not happening like this. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to enter a room, he used to hate that people stand up for him. Imagine this. Let me say this again. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to enter a room, he would hate it if people would stand up for him. आज हमारा कोई बड़ा आ जाए और हम खड़े ना हो, तो मतलब कोई politician आ जाए या कोई कुछ और आ जाए, if they come in, so there is no क्या नाम है, everybody expects you to stand up. Mama, there's Sumaya and her mom here, so maybe you can just receive them at the bottom. ठीक है? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a very humble man that way. Okay. Acha ji, let's keep moving. Another piece of learning is the specialization in Islam. Okay. Specialization is respected in Islam. Does anybody know what specialization means? Anybody have any idea what specialization means? Go ahead, Musa, we'll start with you.
Okay,
Abdullah, you have to raise your hand and I'll come to you, okay?
अच्छा, sorry.
हाँ, मैं आता हूँ आपके पास. जी, Musa, go ahead.
I think specialization means a person contains a specific skill or attribute which contains like a variety between the community.
Okay, good. Thanks, Musa. Hania, I saw your hand up as well.
Yeah, so it's basically like when you like especially focus and study something that you think you're good at. Yeah.
Okay, good. Abdullah, go ahead. आप बताओ.
अच्छा, मैंने भी सेम यही कहना था, स्पेशलाइजेशन यानी कि फर्दर अगर आप एक चीज को डिफाइन कर सकते विद मोर बेटर स्किल्स और बस यही.
Okay, very good. Excellent. No, you guys are mostly right. So basically specialization is respected in Islam. People should do what they believe they are good at. ठीक है? So इसका क्या मतलब है? So इसका मतलब ये होता है, this we can tell because when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba were building the Masjid Nabi, there's a story that there was a man from Najd. Najd is the south of Makkah. ठीक है? So it's towards Yemen. So there was a man from Najd who was with them. This man was a builder. Okay, so he was actually good at building houses. He asked Rasulullah if he could join them in carrying the bricks. कि मैं ईंटें उठाता हूँ. तो Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ने कहा कि नहीं. Instead, he asked the builder to make the mixture for the bricks and make them. So this guy was good at making bricks. He was a builder. So if you're good at making bricks, why should you be carrying bricks? It's counterproductive. इसका फायदा नहीं है. Like इसको economic language में हम क्या कहते हैं? You're being suboptimal, lack of efficiency. So everybody, if you grow up, inshallah, आप लोग सारे economics पढ़ोगे. Even in economies, it's known as the specialization of labor, right? Somebody is the builder, somebody is the carrier, somebody is the driver, so on and so forth. So Islam actually values this. Everybody doesn't have to do everything in terms of tasks, okay? Thus, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him to do this because the builder needed to focus on doing what he was best at. This indicates that in an Islamic work, everybody does not have to do the same thing. I'll give you an example of our Seerah circle. I am not good at, managing an Instagram account or editing videos. So I asked my students to help me. Okay? I'm okay at giving lectures. I can make slides. But मुझे Instagram नहीं operate इतना मुझे आता है but इतना अच्छा नहीं लगता. And then video editing, it takes too much of time and effort. But there, mashallah, some of you are so sharp. So, one of Iman helps me with that. Mariam helps me with that. Other people help me with that. So that's like specialization. If I want to do everything, it's suboptimal. Okay. I can ask Shayan to do something. You can ask somebody else to do something. Even in a home, right? So when you guys wake up, somebody makes the bed, somebody cleans, somebody does the laundry, somebody does the cooking. मिलजुल के इंसान करता है, specialize करके करता है, सारा काम जल्दी हो जाता है. क्या ख्याल है? Yeah. Acha ji, next. Everybody does not need to be a good dai. So everybody does not need to be a good person who gives an Islamic speech. हर किसी का काम नहीं है. आप अगर for example Jashim है, he does a good speech, doesn't mean Shayan you also need to do a good speech. You might be good at individual dawa, or you might be able to be good at typing something and publishing it, for example. ठीक है? या कोई आप में से scholar बन जाए, right? जैसे माशाल्लाह हमजा खान है, he's learning to be a scholar, he's a hafiz. So, not everybody in the room can be possibly an hafiz, but we can have one or two hufaz, one or two scholars, one or two people who are good at fiqh. So that's what an Islamic community is. Everybody pitches in, yeah? And you have to utilize your gifts to the fullest. Okay? And an attribute of a good leader will be to recognize these gifts and advise his followers on how to strengthen these gifts, yeah? Just give me 1 second. How many? Here? 4, right? 5? 5. Okay. So, a good leader will be able to recognize these gifts and advise his followers on how to strengthen these gifts. Okay? Acha ji. So I will do this slide and then we will, what do we have then? Yeah, then we do another thing. So I need a volunteer, or I'll ask Hamza. Hamza, are you there? Hamza Khan. Because the other Hafiz Sahib is not here today. So maybe if you can recite these 2 ayats for us. And then inshallah we'll move ahead. So let's all listen to Hamza for a second, and then inshallah I'll tell you the role of the masjid kya hai. Go ahead, Hamza.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة يخافون يوما تتقلب فيه القلوب والأبصار.
Okay, thank you,
صدق
Hamza.
الله العظيم.
Jazakallah. So what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says these places in masjid, Allah has ordered to be raised so that Allah's name is mentioned there and people are praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, exalting them in the morning and in the evening. Masjid का क्या मकसद है कि लोग उधर आएं, अल्लाह की इबादत करें, सुबह भी करें, शाम को भी करें. ठीक है? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala further says कि उस मस्जिद में कौन लोग जाते हैं, ठीक है? These are men, because it's wajib on men and boys. जो 15-16 years से आप बढ़ जाते हो ना, it's wajib for us to go to the masjid. Why? And who are these men? By the way, masjid में जो जाते हैं ना, you think you're going? You're not going. You're being chosen to go there. There's so many people, so many houses here. MashaAllah, look at you guys, right? The girls upstairs and here. There's so many people here, but Allah chose you to come here. There must have been so many barriers कि यार मेरा दिल नहीं चाह रहा, नींद आ रही है मुझे, but still you came here. You think you came here? No. Allah brought you here because Allah chose you to come here. So similarly, in the masjid, there are men who neither commerce or sale distracts from the remembrance of Allah. They fear a day in which their hearts and eyes will turn about. उस मस्जिद में वो लोग जाते हैं जिनको कोई चीज डिस्ट्रैक्ट नहीं करी. So job है, अजान होगी, you have to leave your job at that moment. You have to go to the masjid. आप लोग बैठे इंस्टाग्राम कर रहे हो, व्हाट्सएप कर रहे हो, सो रहे हो, अजान होगी, you've got to go to the masjid, right? So these are those people, men and women, who nothing can distract because those are the chosen people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? So we're going to do one more slide and then we'll break for a quiz. So these ayat that Hamza just recited beautifully tells us that the masjid is just a building. Char diwari hai, theek hai? The real essence of the building are the people inside the building. That is the spirit of the masjid. Masjid jitni khubsurat bana lo. Now this is this is Fateh Masjid. It's like huge, it's beautiful. But if it's empty, what's the point? Koi fayda thodi hai? So the real essence of a masjid is the people who go inside.
Which masjid is this?
Okay, keep going. Muhammad, did you just want to say something?
Which masjid is this?
This is Fateh Masjid in Turkey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. The Quran talks about men who are in the houses of Allah. These men are not distracted by money or making a living or any other distractions. Ki ye ho raha hai, wo ho raha hai. They're willing to go to the masjid at that point in time. Okay. Although they indeed do run businesses or they earn a livelihood, but when they are present in the house of Allah, they forget about it. If you look at me now, everybody when he does salah, we have raised our hands, right? Allahu Akbar. One of the symbolisms of this is that you forget about everything else. And now you're focused towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, you forget about tension kya hai, amma mama kya keh rahe hain, flana kya hai, school mein kya hai, friends kya, blah, blah, blah. You forget about everything and it is just you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's it. Yeah. Remember when we did Miraj, one of the attributes of Salah was Salah ka hukam Miraj pe mila tha. And it is the Miraj of the moment. Okay? So the primary role of the masjid is that it is a place for Salah and Zikr. Okay, the masjid is the center of learning. In Makkah, it was Darul Arqam, and in Medina, it was Masjid Nabi. So going back to Musa, jo aap keh rahe the, कि Rasulullah must have set up the education system. Indeed, he set up the education system, but the education system was part of the Islamic masjid ka system. Okay, and that's always been the case in Islamic societies. Even in, for example, Fateh Masjid mein aapko dikha raha tha. So Sultan Fateh made it after he conquered Istanbul in 1453. Now this masjid was not just a masjid. There was a soup kitchen. There was a small dispensary. It's a small caravanserai. Does anybody know what a caravanserai is? Go ahead, Shayan.
सर यहाँ पे ट्रेडर्स जो ट्रेड कर रहे होते हैं वो वहाँ आके रुकते हैं.
Very good. So Shayan ने हमें बताया कि caravanserai is a place where you can come and temporarily stay, either if you're a traveler or a trader. So this was all a क्या नाम है integrated place. Okay, Momna, did you want to say something?
Like, is the caravanserai
Can you
a
be a
guest
bit
room?
Can you be a bit louder, please?
I just wanted to ask, like, is the caravanserai a guest room?
So it is that. So in the olden days, especially during the Seljuk times, and basically, if you look at the Islamic history, the Islam used to be in most parts of the Silk Route, right? Silk Route used to be the route from the west, it's from the east to the west. China se leke all those. So all the way Central Asia, Turkey, this was known as the Silk Route. Now, during Seljuk times, during Ottoman times, to make trade better, there used to be a halt. जिस तरह आप इधर से लाहौर जा रहे होते हो ना, इधर चक्री आता है, चक्री के बाद भेरा आता है, भेरा के बाद सुखेकी आता है, सियाल आता है. So in those times, after every some time, maybe 10 miles, maybe 15 miles, there used to be a small halt, stop hota tha. Why you can stay the night, it's secure, you can get fresh horses, you can eat food, and you can do all of these things. So yeah, Mom Nights, it is like sort of a guest house as well. Okay? So masjid used to do all of these things. These were the places where Rasulullah would give his khutbahs, talks, and lectures. Also, the Sahaba would sit in circles and sit together to study the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. Now we'll do this slide and then we'll go to the quiz. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, if people would come together in the house of Allah, studying the book of Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah will give them 4 things. So if you go to the masjid only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're doing zikr there, and if you're doing prayers there, Allah will reward you in 4 ways. 4 aapko cheezein milengi. Okay. What are those 4 things? First and foremost, something that the whole world is running after these days. Puri dunya, chahe aap West mein baithe ho, chahe aap Europe mein baithe ho, Africa mein baithe ho, the whole world is looking for what? Peace of mind. People who live in the West know that most of the people in the West, even if you have millions of dollars in your accounts, are having pills. They're having, antidepressants, anti-anxiety. मतलब उसके बगैर मतलब उनको पीस नहीं मिलता. अल्लाह क्या कहते हैं? If you come to the masjid solely to pray, solely to remember Allah, Allah will give you what? It's called in Arabic sakina. It's tranquility. Peace आप पे आ जाएगा. अक्सर लोग आप लोग मस्जिद जाते हो उसके बाद कहते हो कि अगर आप जुमे के अलावा मतलब आप फजर पे चले जाओ, इशा पे चले जाओ, हार्डली कभी आपको टाइम मिलेगा, आप नमाज से आ रहे हो, आपको स्ट्रेस हो रहा हो, काफी रिलैक्स हो जाता है इंसान. बिकॉज जब आप अल्लाह के सामने सजदा करते हो तो यू लाइक यार एवरीथिंग एल्स डजंट मैटर और द ओनली थिंग दैट मैटर्स इज अल्लाह सुब्हानहू व तआला. Okay, so the first thing, Allah will give you a sakina. The second thing is Allah will have mercy on you. He will forgive you. Rahmah. So sakina is tranquility. Rahma is Allah will have His mercy on you. ठीक है, जितने मर्जी गुनाह कर लो यार, जो भी कर लो, except shirk and किसी के rights आपने अगर नहीं मारे, लेकिन आपने कोई भी गुनाह किए, if you go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ask istighfar, music सुनते थे, cigarette पीते थे, we used to watch something ulta seedha on the masjid, right? I was ship shooter. Well done, hard indeed. How are you typing with bigger font? Hamza Khan wants to know. No, Very good, ji. Very interesting. Acha ji. So let's go back, guys. Let's come back. So the thing is, the masjid is a place for Muslims to meet. It plays a vital role in their social life as well. Okay? And especially living in the West, in a non-Muslim country, masjid is everything. हमें पाकिस्तान में रह के इसकी कदर नहीं है. लेकिन in a non-Muslim country, especially, it's a big part of their life, right? Muslims who pray in Jama'ah would meet 5 times a day. अगर आप 5 वक्त नमाज पढ़ रहे होते हो, आप 5 दफा मिलोगे किसी को और खुदा ना खास्ता 2-3 दिन किसी को ना देखो ना, so you actually call that person कि यार, are you feeling well, are you okay, सब कुछ ठीक है, and you would actually find out that person is not well. So you're making it's like a community club. People go to Jacaranda, people go here, people go there. For good practicing Muslims and Muslimas, the club is the masjid. Okay, in Western countries club उसकी मस्जिद के साथ फुटबॉल फील्ड भी होती है, लोग फुटबॉल भी खेल रहे होते हैं, so पूरी हैप्पी सी जगह होती है काफी. Okay. Acha ji. So then this would strengthen the bond of brotherhood between all of the Muslims. Okay. They also meet on Jummah, and this is like a big congregation. And congregation means assembly of people. Now I just want to ask people, right, especially people who've lived, in different places, even Pakistan wale, how has the masjid been for you, right? Has it been something that you just go and, bura lag raha hai, ja rahe hain, garmi lag rahi, wapas aa rahe hain? Or has it been a community center for you as well? So anybody want to share any experiences? Okay, let's see hands, more hands, and then I'll go to everybody. Okay, good. We'll start with Hamza. Go ahead.
I've noticed like the masajid
Hamza, a
over
bit
here are,
louder also, please.
yeah, okay. I've noticed the masajid here are like they're not very much like community centers because usually they just do namaz and then they don't really have any other programs going on. But I know in like
Have you?
non-Muslim countries they're usually like pretty big and they have schools and it's like pretty much a big community center.
So so which countries have you lived in, Hamza?
The only non-Muslim country I've lived in is Canada. So
And how was
over
the
there,
masjid there in Canada? What was it like?
over there, it was a big masjid and they would have like everything. They would have a school, they would have a gym, they would teach like Islamic studies, they would teach Quran. They had everything going on. It was like a whole community center. So all Muslims would come there.
Okay, very good. Anybody else want to share their experiences? Musa, aap batao.
Yes, so near my house is a masjid where we all it's our sector C masjid where we all gather, and there's like this masjid is very small in comparison because there's a lot of people like a lot of people crowd the area.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Musa. Okay, so let's go back. Okay. So the masjid was also a dwelling place for the traveler and the poor. There was a place in Masjid Nabi which was known as the Ahlul Sufa, which was built for the people in the masjid. So abhi bhi aap Masjid Nabi mein jaoge, you can see that place raised up. Okay. So back in the day, even now, the masjid is a place where you can rest also and you can sleep. But sleeping is only allowed for those people who are in the state of itikaf. Okay, so even if you are going there in a masjid not in Ramazan, if you do the niyat of itikaf, you can sleep in the masjid. Okay, so aapko saath sawab bhi mil raha hota hai, and then you can also rest in the masjid. So what I'm just trying to say is that unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, in Pakistan we have lots of masajid, alhamdulillah, but we don't value those masajid. हाँ है, अम्मा भेज रही है, खुद जाना है, वो है. But जहाँ मस्जिदें नहीं होती हैं, I mean, I was speaking to somebody who used to, non-Muslim था या क्या था, travel 40 minutes for just Jamaat, right? Because he used to love going to the masjid so much. So think of this masjid as something that is a place where we meet our friends and community. And the best friends that you make are people who you pray with, because उनकी values आपकी values एक जैसी होंगी. Okay? Acha ji, the masjid was also the place where the armies were sent out from. Okay, the banners or the standards of war would be handed out to the people. Can anybody tell me what this picture is about? Raise your hands if you know. Okay. Any other hands? Yeah, but people who know their Islamic history know this. Okay, let me go with Muhammad first. Go ahead, Muhammad.
I've seen this picture before, but I can't exactly remember what
Louder,
it's
louder. You have to raise your hand.
called. I've seen this picture before.
I can't hear you, Muhammad. You have to be louder.
1 second.
He said
Go ahead.
Okay, I've seen this picture before. I don't know exactly what it is, but I can tell they're Ottoman people.
Good.
So it's an Ottoman army outside the masjid.
Very good. So you got half of it right. Musa, go ahead.
18th till 19th century Ottoman Empire.
Okay, close. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Are we getting ready for war
Where?
in Turkey?
No. Last chance. Any girls? Mariam, take a guess.
And Sumaya wants to say something. Yes,
Guys,
Sumaya
this
wants
is a very historic picture. This is a picture of Bait al-Maqdis. Okay. This is, what's the masjid in Bait al-Maqdis?
Masjid al-Aqsa.
Masjid Aqsa. Jerusalem. आज जंग कहाँ चल रही है जाशम? पैलेस्टाइन में कौन सी most holiest जगह है? Masjid Aqsa. That's the third holiest place. So guys, this is outside Masjid Aqsa complex. This is the Ottoman Empire army trying to defend it against the British during the First World War. This was the last time a Muslim army was in charge of Baitul Maqdis or Masjid Aqsa.
the dome
This
of
was the
rock.
last time a Muslim army was in command of Masjid al-Aqsa. If you remember, Masjid Aqsa came, Jerusalem came in the time of Umar Razillah Ta'ala. All right. Any other questions?
Baba,
No,
somebody
sir.
wants to share something.
Okay, louder lekin thoda sa, okay?
I was saying about the picture that the masjid behind is the dome of rock
Correct.
and the masjid is on the other side, which I think they're facing or on their left somewhere.
You're absolutely right. So this is the Dome of the Rock from where he went for the Miraj. But always remember, as Muslims, and we did this in the Makkah series, Masjid Aqsa is the entire complex that we look at. Yes, the masjid is on one side, but for us, if somebody asks you, what's holy? Is the Dome of the Rock holy? Is Masjid Aqsa holy? The entire complex, and I shared that in the Makkah series. I'll try and dig it out somewhere. This is known as the Masjid Aqsa complex. So for us, the entire complex is holy. But you're right, that's the Dome of the Rock, and on the left side is the masjid. Okay? Okay, let's move. Achha, also remember something, the masjid was a place for dawah. When Christians from Yemen visited, they stayed inside the masjid. So Aap Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam ke waqt mein Najd se, Yemen se Christians aaye the. Where did they stay? They stayed in the masjid. Where did they pray? In the Masjid Nabwi. Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the Sahaba were not like us. Ki ji, wo tum Hindu ho, nahi masjid na aana. There was a big Indian leader during the War of Independence, 1947 se pehle. His name was Dr. Ambedkar. He was a bigger leader than Gandhi. ठीक है, पर आप लोग जाके Google करना. And he was a Dalit. You know, Dalit is in Hinduism, you have the caste system. The Brahmins are at the top, and then the Shudras, and then you have the Dalits. The Dalits are the lowest of the lows. So he was very, disenfranchised by the Hindus. Ki ji, ye kya hai? I can't. If I'm born like this, that should not make me different from other people. So he actually wanted to become Muslim. So he writes in his book, "Main ek masjid gaya, and the Muslims in India saw me, and they knew that I was a Dalit, and they said, don't come to the masjid." And he said, that's because and that is the reason I didn't become Muslim. And he became a Buddhist. And Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam kya kare? Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam saying, if you're a Christian, no problem, come to the masjid, stay in the masjid. There was a time, there's a hadith that there's a person who came in the Masjid Nabi, and he started, peeing in the corner of the masjid. And the Sahaba got really angry. So Aap Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam ne kaha, ruk jao, yaar, relax. कोई मसला नहीं है. Let him finish. Once he's finished, clean the area और उसको प्यार से समझा दो. हमारे यहाँ अनफॉर्चुनेटली फोन बजना शुरू हो जाए, हम उस बंदे को जो है ना थप्पड़ मारने पहुंच जाते हैं. बच्चे थोड़ा शोर मचा लें. So the masjid was something that was open to everybody. Okay, Harun, you have a question? He didn't become Muslim. No, I mean, it's a very good question. Harun is asking that Dr. Ambedkar didn't become Muslim because of the action of those Muslims. So will he be forgiven? No. Allah has said to you, if you want to follow Islam, don't look at the Muslims of today. You have to look at what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches in the Quran and what the best example was. The best example was who? Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. After them, the Sahaba. आप और मैं अगर अच्छे नहीं, we're not, हमसे अल्लाह पूछेगा, मुझसे पूछेगा, आपसे पूछेगा, yeah, why weren't you good ambassadors of Islam? Correct? All right. Okay, let's move ahead. We have a few minutes to go. Acha ji, they stayed there so that they could see the Muslim pray and have discussions with non-Muslim. This tells us that non-Muslim should be allowed to enter the masajid. We should not be, even when I was studying in the UK, a lot of times हमारा open day होता था मस्जिद में, especially during Christmas, Easter. So हम इंग्लैंड में होते थे, मस्जिद खोल देते थे, बाहर लगा होता था, come celebrate Easter inside the masjid, and people will be like, astaghfirullah, how can we be celebrate? No, come learn about Easter in the masjid. Now, when you would come inside the masjid, we would tell them, यार Easter जो है, ये it's not a Christian festival, it's a pagan festival. Okay, what does Islam say about Jesus? Oh, Islam believes this, and people would be fascinated. अच्छा, आपके दीन में भी आप मरियम अलैहिस्सलाम की जो है इतनी इज्जत करते हो? अच्छा, आप लोग भी कहते हो कि that he was born without a mother, without a father. Oh, really? जो चीजें आपको obvious लग रही होती हैं वो non-Muslims को obvious नहीं होती. ठीक है? And the best place to give dawah is that masjid. They come and experience it. There are no booths there. There are no idols there. There are no pictures of Jesus Christ there. It's a peaceful place. Okay? Where are we? Okay, now we're going to